You know, that's the exact thing that what we're going to do, what any trial lawyer does, is that they want the jurors in the box to put themselves in the position of the person, in this case, the defendant. What would you have done if you had heard your daughter screaming in a barn and had run in and had seen molestation? What would you have done? And was that reasonable, what he did do? That's what they're hoping these jurors are going to ask themselves. I think that you can look at the actions of the father afterward, and they tell a lot about his sort of mindset and where he came from. Meaning specifically, he contacted the police after this event and said, this is what I did, this is what I saw. The police then came out, they investigated. So far from stories that we've heard, his story matches up to what he told the police. That tells you a lot about where he was coming from. Well, two things. I always think that cases are won and lost in jury selection. So identifying those jurors in the beginning of who you want is crucial. In prosecution, I would be looking for those thinkers that are more rigid in thinking, meaning that they see cases as right and wrong. They look at things in a more concrete, linear, right and wrong manner. On the flip side, if I was working for the defense, I would be identifying people, and you can do this through jury questionnaires, voir dire, who are more gray thinkers, who can see things more in a conspiracy way. Hence, if I can prove a doubt, even a speculation of a doubt, I've got someone in that box who's already thinking to themselves, you know what? I could see potentially that happening.
It's devastated this community. This, unemployment, all of the people who lost their savings. So the knowledge is an important part legally. The life experience that those jurors have brought in about how it affected the community, it's already there. Every once in a while you'll have what we call a stealth juror, a juror that has their own agenda that they bring into the courtroom. And when you have high publicity cases like this, there is bound to be one or two jurors that may have their own agenda. Maybe it's a book deal. Maybe they want to make the TV rounds. But there's always those one or two people that they want something else besides maybe justice.
What the judge did today was that he looked at this and he said, the jury in this case found you guilty on 4 counts. The defense came back and said, you know what? Out of those 4 counts, we want this to be looked as 1 act, 1 lie, hence 1 year. What the judge said was, no, I'm looking at these 4 counts as 4 separate and distinct acts of the time that Casey Anthony lied. Hence, he gave her the maximum sentence of the 4 years. But he rejected the defense's argument that all those 4 different counts were grouped together in some sort of 1 act, 1 lie. He saw 4 separate times of lies and granted his punishment accordingly. The burden of proof in this instance, because it's murder, this is the highest burden of proof that we have in the litigation system. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest, strictest standard. And so what I think this juror was saying, and as we've heard from her in this interview, is that you did not prove to me, prosecution, how Kaylee died. Hence, I had some doubts. I didn't know the what, I didn't know the where, I didn't know the why. So you haven't gotten me to beyond a reasonable doubt.
You started with a 400 jury panel, and then it got whittled down to 96 people who went to the courtroom yesterday. Can they be fair and impartial? We all bring our life experiences and our perceptions into the courtroom. You just hope that they will just rely on the facts of the case in making that judgment. And most jurors that I've ever come into contact with, they want to do the right thing. So their heart will be to try to see both sides and to do the right thing. It'll be a very hard process to find jurors who don't already have a preconceived belief about what occurred with Enron. He asked, actually, it was a lady juror who asked the defendant's lawyer, your cologne was a little bit too excessive, so she asked the judge if the judge could tell Mr. Skilling's lawyer to take off his cologne because it was interfering with her concentration. It does tell us a little bit about this particular juror. She must be somewhat of a strong, juror to walk up to the judge and say, I'm really kind of feeling sick with this. So can you tell him to sort of tone it down or take off that cologne?
Interesting side note in the trial.
Well, the prosecution has done a good job of making this case about earnings over ethics. So the defendants really have to prove that Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling did not know about certain events that were occurring at Enron. Jurors are often, when they evaluate witnesses, they look at the character of a witness. So that's credibility, but also likability. Mr. Lay especially has, from what people say, that likability quotient. It'll be interesting to see how well he does on the stand.